All right, strap in, everyone. Today we are diving deep into deep end with this one, the carnivore diet.
Oh yeah, this one's pretty out there.
That's one way to put it. 30 days, only meat, no plants, no carbs.
It's definitely not your average diet plan.
Not at all. But there's a lot of buzz around it. People are claiming some pretty wild results like crazy weight loss.
Yeah, that's one of the big ones you hear about for sure.
And some say it boosts muscle growth,
Hmm. Interesting.
even like mental clarity. It sounds almost too good to be true, right?
Right, there has to be a catch. There are definitely some red flags we need to unpack.
Exactly. So our mission today is to cut through the hype and figure out what the science actually says, what really happens to your body on this all-meat express.
Well, the first thing to understand is that the carnivore diet sends your body into a metabolic state called ketosis. And it happens fast. We're talking within days.
Ketosis, that's like the whole premise behind the keto diet,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Normally, our bodies use carbohydrates as their primary fuel source. But cut those carbs out completely, and the body has no choice but to adapt.
So it's like a metabolic survival mode.
Pretty much, and that's where ketosis kicks in. Your body starts burning fat for energy instead of those carbs it's used to.
So you're basically flipping a switch from carb burning to fat burning.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. And this shift comes with some pretty interesting effects. First off, all that protein and fat from the meat keeps you feeling full for a long time.
I can imagine it's got to be more satisfying than a salad, right?
Right. You're much less likely to get those hunger pangs. And because you're staying full longer, you naturally end up eating fewer calories overall. That's a big reason for the rapid weight loss people report.
So it's like built-in portion control.
Pretty much. And there's even research suggesting that the carnivore diet might be better for building muscle than plant-based protein.
Whoa, hold on. That goes against everything we usually hear, right?
Yeah.
Plant-based protein is always touted as the best for muscle building.
It's a common assumption, but some studies have shown that meat might actually be more effective, even when the protein intake is the same. There was one study that showed older men who combined the carnivore diet with weight training had increased muscle growth. Another one that showed vegetarians had a lower muscle mass index. Pretty interesting stuff, huh?
It definitely challenges the conventional wisdom. I'm starting to see why this diet is so intriguing, even with all its extremeness.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think.
Okay, so we've got the weight loss and muscle gain, which are obviously big selling points. But our sources also mention some other early benefits that go beyond the purely physical.
Oh yeah, definitely. A lot of people report feeling a lot better overall, like in terms of digestive issues and allergies.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me. How could cutting out RL plants suddenly make you less sensitive to certain foods? It seems counterintuitive.
There's this theory that some compounds in plants, things like lectins, act as defense mechanisms, like they're there to protect the plant from being eaten.
Makes sense. Plants have to defend themselves somehow.
Exactly. But the thing is, these compounds can be a bit problematic for humans. Some people react to them in a negative way.
So it's like those compounds are messing with our systems.
Yeah, they can trigger digestive issues, inflammation, even things like fatigue.
Ah, I see. So by ditching plants, you're also ditching the stuff that might be causing you trouble.
Right. Plus, you're automatically cutting out common allergens like gluten and dairy. So it makes sense that people experience relief from things like bloating, headaches, just generally feeling off.
It would be a huge relief if you're someone who's always battling food sensitivities.
Totally. And then on top of that, there are a lot of people who say they feel mentally sharper when they go carnivore. This is often linked to being in ketosis. Apparently, your brain actually loves using ketones for fuel.
Huh. So it's not just about the physical changes. You could actually feel mentally sharper, too.
That's what a lot of people experience. Yeah, they say the brain fog lifts, their focus improves, things like that.
Okay, color me intrigued. And I have to admit, the simplicity of this diet is pretty appealing. No calorie counting, very minimal meal prep. Just meat, meat, and more meat.
It definitely simplifies things, that's for sure. If you're someone with a busy lifestyle, that can be a major plus.
I can totally see that. But I have to ask, is it all sunshine and roses? Because we've also got to talk about the keto flu.
Yes, the infamous keto flu. It's like your body's way of protesting this sudden and dramatic shift in how it gets energy.
And what kind of protest are we talking about here?
Well, as your body transitions from burning glucose to burning fat, you might experience some not-so-fun side effects. Fatigue, headaches, cravings, even nausea in some cases.
Sounds rough. How long does this carb detox misery usually last?
It varies from person to person, but most people feel the worst of it for a few days to a week and a half. Then there's the whole fiber issue,
Hmm.
or rather the lack of fiber.
Yeah, steak doesn't exactly scream high fiber, does it?
Nope, not really. Meat has zero fiber, which is kind of a big deal. Fiber keeps things moving smoothly in your digestive system, so it's no surprise that constipation is a pretty common complaint. But what's weird is that some people actually experience the opposite diarrhea.
Wait, seriously. Less fiber should mean things slow down, not speed up, right? What's going on there?
There are a couple of theories. One thought is that it has to do with the sudden shift in gut bacteria. Remember those little microbes that live in your gut? They love fiber.
So what happens when they don't get their fiber fix?
They have to adapt. And that adaptation process can lead to some, shall we say, digestive turbulence. The other thing is that a lot of fat, like you get on the carnivore diet, can act as a laxative.
Ah, so it's a bit of a digestive gamble then.
You could say that. It really just shows that everyone's body reacts differently to these kinds of changes.
So even with all these potential benefits we're talking about, it sounds like those first few weeks on the carnivore diet can be a bit of a roller coaster.
That's a good way to put it. But for some people, the potential rewards are worth pushing through that initial discomfort. However, when we start looking at the long term, that's where some bigger concerns come into play.
Okay, let's dive into that then. What happens when you commit to this all-meat life for a longer period? What are we talking about?
Well, the biggest concern is that you might end up missing out on some important nutrients. Meat is packed with protein and B vitamins, no doubt, but it's lacking in some crucial nutrients that you can only really get from plants.
So it's not a complete nutritional powerhouse after all.
Not quite. For example, vitamin E is a really important antioxidant that helps protect your cells from damage. And it's mostly found in plant foods like leafy greens and nuts.
So no more salads means missing out on those antioxidants.
Exactly. And then there's vitamin C, the one that's super important for your immune system and helps your body make collagen.
The scurvy vitamin.
Right. And while scurvy is pretty rare these days, it is still a risk if you're not consistently getting enough vitamin C.
So even if you're eating steak for every meal, you could still be deficient in some really important vitamins.
That's the thing. And we can't forget about calcium, vital for strong bones, but meat doesn't really have enough to meet your daily needs.
So I'm guessing this is where organ meats and bone broth come into the picture. I've heard those are popular additions to the carnivore diet.
You got it. Organ meats, though maybe not the most appetizing, are nutritional powerhouses. They're loaded with vitamins and minerals, including vitamin C and bone broth. It's a great source of calcium and collagen.
So it's not just about steak and burgers if you're serious about this diet long term.
Yeah.
You've got to branch out a bit.
Yep. And then, of course, there's the cholesterol issue.
The elephant in the room, so to speak.
Pretty much. Meat, especially red meat, has a lot of saturated fat. And saturated fat can raise your LDL cholesterol levels.
That's the bad kind, right?
Yep. And high LDL cholesterol is linked to heart disease. Now, there is some newer research that suggests dietary cholesterol might not be as big of a problem as we used to think. But it's still something to be cautious about, especially for those who already have heart issues.
So mixed bag when it comes to heart health, it seems.
Exactly. If you're thinking about trying the carnivore diet, especially long term, you absolutely need to talk to your doctor and get regular checkups. You need to monitor your cholesterol levels and make sure things are staying in a healthy range.
It sounds like there are some serious trade-offs to consider.
Absolutely. Weighing the potential benefits against the possible risks is key. And that's exactly what we're here to help you do.
Okay, so in the last part, we talked about some of those initial changes that happen when you go full carnivore.
The keto flu, the digestive weirdness, like your body's going, whoa, what is happening here?
Yeah, no kidding. It really seems like a shock to the system. We were talking about fiber, or should I say the lack of fiber.
Right. Meat has absolutely none.
And that just seems so counterintuitive, you know?
Yeah.
Less fiber should mean things slow down, not speed up. But then some people actually end up with diarrhea.
Yeah, it seems backwards. But there are actually a couple of reasons for that. First, there's the impact on your gut bacteria. Those little guys are used to having a steady supply of fiber.
So when you suddenly take that away,
It throws their whole world upside down. They have to scramble to adapt, and that can lead to some digestive distress, like diarrhea.
So it's not just about the absence of fiber, it's about how that absence affects your gut's microbiome.
Exactly. The other thing is the high-fat content on the carnivore diet can also have a laxative effect, especially in the beginning when your body's still adjusting.
Okay, so it's a bit of a digestive gamble then. Some people get constipated, others get diarrhea.
It all depends on how your individual body reacts.
And then, of course, we have the keto flu. Not exactly a walk in the park.
Definitely not. It can be pretty rough for some people. Remember, you're drastically cutting carbs, so your body goes into ketosis, starts burning fat for fuel.
It's like switching out your car engine for a totally different model.
That's a great analogy. And during that switch, you can experience some pretty unpleasant symptoms. Fatigue, headaches, strong cravings.
Sounds like a real energy slump. How long does this carb withdrawal usually last?
Most people feel the brunt of it for a few days, maybe up to a week and a half. And then there's the increased thirst. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, that one came up in our research too. What's the deal with that?
That's all tied to the depletion of glycogen in your body. Glycogen is how your body stores carbs and it binds to water.
So when you ditch carbs.
You deplete those glycogen stores and the water that was bound to them gets released.
So you're flushing out stored carbs and need water.
Exactly, which leads to more peeing and then, of course, more thirst.
Got to stay hydrated. Now, I'm curious about this whole mental clarity thing. Is there any actual science behind that, or is it just hype?
There is some really interesting research on this. It turns out that ketones, those molecules your body produces when it's burning fat, can be a super efficient energy source for your brain.
Whoa, so your brain can run on fat just like your muscles.
Exactly. And some studies have shown that ketones may actually enhance cognitive function. So that feeling of mental clarity, that sharper focus, it might not just be a placebo effect. There could be a real physiological reason for it.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, it makes sense. We always hear about how important healthy fats are for brain health.
It all ties together for sure. But here's the thing. We always have to remember that everyone's body is different.
Of course, one person's miracle diet is another person's nightmare.
Exactly. Some people might feel those mental benefits really strongly, while others might not notice much of a difference. And that's true for a lot of the effects we've been talking about.
Okay, so results may vary. Got it. But I think we also need to talk about the fact that this is a pretty extreme way of eating.
Oh, for sure. It's incredibly restrictive.
And that restriction could have some downsides, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, there's that potential for things to backfire in the long run.
So let's unpack that. What happens when you stick with this diet for an extended period? What are we risking?
Well, we've already talked about those nutrient deficiencies, right?
The vitamin E, the vitamin C, the calcium.
That's right. And those deficiencies can really start to add up over time.
What kind of impact are we talking about?
We'll take vitamin E, for example. It's a powerful antioxidant. It protects your cells from damage. And low levels of vitamin E have been linked to some pretty serious health problems down the line. Things like heart disease, even some types of cancer.
So even if you're dropping weight and feeling mentally sharp in the short term, you could be setting yourself up for problems later on.
It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
And then there's vitamin C. That's crucial for your immune system. Wound healing, collagen production. Collagen is what keeps your skin looking young and healthy, keeps your bones and joints strong.
So a vitamin C deficiency could affect everything from your ability to fight off a cold to the health of your skin and bones.
You got it. And even though some people argue that your body gets better at absorbing vitamin C on a low-carb diet, it's still really tough to get enough from meat alone.
So it's a risky gamble, to say the least. What about calcium?
Same story. Meat has some calcium, but not nearly enough.
So if you're not careful, could the carnivore diet actually lead to weaker bones?
That's a legitimate concern, especially for women who are already at a higher risk of osteoporosis.
So even though it might offer some quick wins, those bone health implications are something to seriously consider.
No doubt about it. And those are just 3 of the nutrients you could be missing out on.
Are there any others?
Plenty. Fiber, of course, is a big one. Magnesium, potassium. These are all essential nutrients that play a huge role in your overall health. And they're all abundant in plant foods.
Which are, of course, a no-go on this diet. It sounds like this could create a pretty big nutritional gap.
It absolutely has the potential to. Now, some people who do the carnivore diet try to compensate by adding things like organ meats and bone broth.
Right, we talked about that earlier. Organ meats are super nutrient-dense, and bone broth is good for collagen and minerals.
That's true. But even with those additions, it's still incredibly challenging to meet all your nutritional needs on a strictly meat-based diet. And let's be honest, not everyone's excited about the prospect of eating liver and kidneys.
I'm not going to lie, I'm not exactly rushing to the butcher shop for organ meats.
Ah.
But okay, so we've got these potential nutrient deficiencies. What other long-term implications are we missing?
Well, one thing that often gets overlooked is the impact on athletic performance.
That's interesting. You'd think a diet focused on protein would be good for athletes, right?
You would, wouldn't you? But it's a bit more complicated than that. Some athletes actually report a dip in performance when they first go low carb, high fat.
Why would that be?
Remember how we talked about carbs being your body's preferred source of quick energy? Well, when you suddenly cut those out, your body has to switch gears and learn to use fat as its main fuel source.
So it's like your body's trying to run a marathon on fumes.
Exactly. But here's the thing. After that initial adaptation period, some athletes find that their performance actually improves.
So there's hope for improvement, but there might be some struggles in the beginning.
Exactly. But we also have to talk about the mental and emotional side of things.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the connection between the carnivore diet and mental health?
Well, studies have shown a link between carb intake and serotonin levels in your brain. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter. It plays a big role in regulating your mood, your sleep, even your appetite.
So if you're drastically cutting carbs, could that mess with your serotonin levels?
Potentially, yeah. Some people who follow very low-carb diets report experiencing mood swings, irritability, even symptoms of depression.
So not just physical side effects, but emotional ones too. That's something to be mindful of.
Definitely. It highlights how important it is to pay attention to how you're feeling, both physically and emotionally.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered nutrient deficiencies, the impact on athletic performance, the potential mental health implications. Is there anything else we should be thinking about in terms of long-term sustainability?
Well, it's the financial side of things.
Yeah, that's the thing that jumps out at me right away. An all-meat diet can't be cheap.
You're right, meat is expensive, especially if you want high-quality cuts.
And when you're eating it for every single meal,
Yeah,
those costs add up fast.
exactly. Now, I guess it depends on your current eating habits. If you're someone who's already spending a ton of money on processed foods, takeout, restaurant meals,
Switching to a meat-based diet might actually save you money.
it could, especially if you're focusing on nutrient-dense animal products. But if you're someone who's already eating a pretty balanced diet and you're watching your budget,
The carnivore diet could blow your grocery bill sky high.
it's definitely a trade-off to consider.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Benefits, risks, the science behind it all, the sustainability factor. It's a lot to take in.
It is. And it's important to remember that this is just an overview. We're just scratching the surface here.
We're not giving medical advice. We're just trying to give you the information you need to make your own informed decisions about your health.
And speaking of decisions, in the next part, we're going to talk about some alternative approaches to reaching your health goals, without having to resort to these super restrictive diets.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
We'll get into it next time. But for now, just keep in mind that there are lots of options out there.
Stay tuned for the final part of our carnivore diet deep dive. We'll be wrapping everything up and hopefully leaving you with some food for thought. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the carnivore diet. We've covered a lot of ground, the good, the bad, the science, and now I think we really need to address the sustainability question.
Yeah, that's a big one. And it's not just about personal sustainability. Like, can you actually stick with this diet long term? It's also about the environmental impact.
Exactly. We talked about those nutrient gaps that can happen when you only eat meat.
Right, those deficiencies in vitamins and minerals.
And those can have some serious consequences for your health down the line.
Absolutely. Your energy levels, your immune system, your bone health, your mental well-being. It all takes a hit when you're not getting the nutrients you need.
It's like trying to build a house without all the necessary materials. It might look okay for a while, but eventually it's going to start falling apart.
That's a great way to put it. And on top of that, we have to talk about the ethical and environmental impact of eating so much meat.
Yeah, livestock farming is a huge contributor to climate change, deforestation, water pollution.
The list goes on. And as the global demand for meat keeps increasing, those environmental concerns become even more urgent.
So if you're someone who's trying to live a more eco-conscious lifestyle, the carnivore diet might not be the best fit.
Right. It's definitely something to consider. Now, that's not to say there aren't ways to make more sustainable choices within this framework.
Okay, like what? What are some things people can do to minimize their impact?
Well, one of the most important things is to focus on sourcing your meat ethically. Look for local farms that use regenerative agriculture practices.
Regenerative agriculture. Remind me what that is again.
It's all about farming in a way that actually improves the health of the soil, increases biodiversity, and prioritizes animal welfare.
So it's not just about reducing the negative impact, it's about actually making things better.
Exactly. And often those farms produce higher quality, more nutrient-dense meat as well.
So you're not just doing good for the planet, you're also doing good for your body.
Win-win.
Okay, so that's the environmental side of sustainability. But let's talk about personal sustainability for a minute. Can people actually stick with this diet long term?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think the answer depends a lot on the individual.
Like, some people might really thrive on the simplicity. No decisions to make, just meat.
Exactly. And for some, that might be really freeing. They might love the mental clarity they experience, the lack of cravings.
But for others, the lack of variety, the social challenges, that could be a deal breaker.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine it gets pretty old trying to explain to your friends and family why you can't have a slice of birthday cake.
Plus, those cravings for fruits and vegetables, they're often your body's way of telling you it needs something.
That's right. Those cravings are giving you valuable information. So while the carnivore diet might be an interesting experiment to try for a short period.
It might not be a sustainable long-term solution for most people.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance.
So is there a middle ground? A way to get some of the potential benefits of a meat-focused diet without going to such an extreme?
Absolutely. There are tons of ways to prioritize animal-based foods in your diet without completely eliminating entire food groups.
Okay, give me some examples.
Yeah.
I'm all ears.
Well, one option is cyclical keto. It's basically cycling between periods of higher carb intake and periods of very low carb intake.
So you get to experience the benefits of ketosis.
But you also get to enjoy a wider variety of foods.
That sounds more manageable, for sure. What else?
You could simply focus on incorporating more high-quality meat, poultry, and fish into your meals while still having plenty of fruits, vegetables, and healthy fats.
That sounds like a more balanced approach.
It is, and honestly, sometimes just cutting out processed foods, refined sugars, and unhealthy fats can make a huge difference.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Right.
Your body, your lifestyle, your preferences.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to nutrition.
And if you're ever feeling lost or confused, don't be afraid to reach out to a registered dietitian or a qualified healthcare professional.
They can help you figure out a plan that's tailored to your specific needs and goals.
Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the carnivore diet.
We've explored a lot, haven't we? The science, the potential benefits, the risks, the long-term sustainability.
It's been a wild ride, but hopefully we've given you some food for thought, pun intended.
Always. Remember, knowledge is power when it comes to making decisions about your health.
That's right. So keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep experimenting until you find what works for you. We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Until then, happy eating.